Somewhere on Earth, nearly 40 years ago, a terrifying incident took place that people still whisper about today. Whether it was a true paranormal event or simply a story passed down through generations, nobody can say for certain. But for the family who experienced it, the nightmare was very real. At that time, a large family lived together in an isolated community. Their home was always filled with laughter, children running through the halls, and relatives coming and going throughout the day. Among them was a newborn baby named Samuel, lovingly called Sam by everyone in the family. His parents, Emily and Jack, were overjoyed to welcome their first child into the world. And like any young parents, they dreamed of a bright future for their son. One ordinary afternoon, while the family's grandmother was busy sewing clothes for neighbors, two unfamiliar women arrived at the house. No one had ever seen them before. They appeared friendly, polite, and completely normal. They handed over pieces of fabric and asked if she could stitch some garments for both of them. While speaking, however, both women seemed strangely interested in the children playing around the house. Their attention eventually settled on baby Sam, who was sleeping peacefully nearby. Before leaving, one of the women smiled and said, "What a beautiful home, so many children." The comment seemed harmless, yet something about the way they stared at the baby made the grandmother uncomfortable. Still, she ignored the feeling and continued with her work after they left. A few hours later, something unusual happened. Baby Sam suddenly began crying. At first, nobody worried. Newborn babies cry all the time, and everyone assumed he was hungry, tired, or uncomfortable. His mother fed him, rocked him gently, and carried him around the house. But nothing worked. The crying only became worse. As the afternoon turned into evening, Sam's cries became screams. It sounded as if he were experiencing unbearable pain. Every member of the family tried to comfort him, but no matter what they did, the child would not stop crying. Hours passed, and the atmosphere inside the house grew heavier with every passing minute. Then, just as darkness began settling over the property, a strange disturbance occurred in the courtyard. Two black cats suddenly appeared out of nowhere and began fighting violently. Their screeches echoed through the air, sending chills through everyone who heard them. Family members rushed outside and tried to scare the animals away, but neither cat seemed interested in leaving. They clawed and attacked each other with unnatural aggression. The fight continued for several minutes until suddenly one of the cats lost a tooth. The broken tooth fell onto the ground along with drops of blood. Moments later, both animals ran away into the darkness, and at that exact moment, baby Sam stopped crying. Completely. The sudden silence felt almost unnatural. Everyone looked at one another, confused but relieved. No one understood what had just happened, but at least the baby seemed peaceful again. The family cleaned the courtyard, offered a few prayers, and tried to put the strange event behind them. For the first time all day, Sam slept peacefully. His exhausted mother finally relaxed and lay down beside him. But sometime after midnight, a loud crash echoed through the house. The entire family woke up instantly. The sound had come from the kitchen. Everyone rushed toward the noise and discovered a large container of milk lying on the floor. A food cabinet nearby stood wide open. No one could explain how it had happened. They assumed a cat had somehow gotten inside the house and knocked everything over. After cleaning the mess and discussing it briefly, everyone returned to bed, believing the worst was over. The next morning, Sam's mother noticed something unusual. Her baby normally woke up very early and cried for milk, but today the house remained strangely quiet. At first she smiled, assuming he was finally getting proper rest after such a difficult day. She walked over to the crib and gently lifted him into her arms. The moment she touched him, a scream escaped her lips. Sam's body was cold. He wasn't breathing. The child was gone. The entire family rushed into the room, and within moments the house was filled with grief, confusion, and panic. But what they discovered next terrified them even more. While examining the baby's body, they noticed something impossible. The left side of his chest appeared strangely hollow, as though something inside was missing. No one understood what they were seeing. There were no answers, only fear. 5 days after the tragedy, Jack's older sister Carol finally arrived at the house. She had traveled a long distance after hearing the devastating news. The moment she stepped inside, she could feel the heavy atmosphere hanging over the family. Emily looked exhausted from days of crying, while Jack seemed like a man who had lost a part of his soul. After listening carefully to every detail surrounding Sam's death, Carol became unusually quiet. Her expression changed completely. Finally, she looked at the family and said, "If only I had arrived sooner." Everyone immediately demanded an explanation. They had already suffered enough, and now Carol seemed to know something they didn't. Carol slowly explained that years earlier, she had heard of a strange supernatural case investigated by an experienced spiritual researcher. According to that story, certain dark entities could disguise themselves as ordinary people. Sometimes they appeared as harmless travelers. Sometimes they took the form of animals. And when they targeted a family, strange signs often appeared before tragedy struck. As she described these signs, she mentioned violent animal behavior, unexplained disturbances, and unusual visitors. The family immediately remembered the 2 black cats that had fought in the courtyard and the 2 mysterious women who had visited the house only hours before Sam became ill. Then Carol asked an important question. Did those women leave anything behind? The grandmother suddenly remembered the fabric they had brought for sewing. She quickly retrieved it from a nearby shelf. As soon as Carol saw the cloth, her face turned pale. She believed the women had never come for sewing at all. According to the stories she had heard, certain entities often left personal belongings behind as a way of creating a connection to their intended victims. The room fell silent. For the first time, the family began considering the possibility that Sam's death had not been natural. Jack could barely control his emotions. The grief that had consumed him for days slowly transformed into anger. Someone or something had taken his son. He could not accept living the rest of his life without knowing why. Determined to find answers, he left home with Carol and traveled to meet a respected exorcist who had spent years investigating supernatural encounters. The elderly man listened carefully as Jack described everything that had happened, from the arrival of the 2 women to the fight between the black cats and the mysterious condition of his son's body. After a long silence, the exorcist finally spoke. If dark forces are involved, finding them will be dangerous. These things do not want to be found. But Jack didn't hesitate. He had already lost the most important thing in his life. Fear no longer mattered to him. Seeing his determination, the exorcist agreed to help. He blessed a cross, gave Jack a small bottle of holy water, and taught him several prayers believed to offer protection against evil influences. Before they parted ways, the exorcist gave one final warning. Never trust appearances. These entities survive by deception. They can appear kind, beautiful, helpless, or innocent. What you see may not be what truly stands before you. Armed with little more than faith and determination, Jack began his search. Days turned into weeks as he traveled from one isolated place to another, following rumors and strange stories. Many leads went nowhere. Some people thought he was chasing ghosts. Others refused to speak about the things they had witnessed. Yet Jack continued moving forward, convinced that somewhere he would find the truth. One evening, while traveling along a deserted road, he noticed a young woman sitting alone near a crossroads. She appeared frightened and vulnerable. As Jack approached, she claimed she was lost and needed help finding her way home. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but as they spoke, a strange feeling settled over him. The woman smiled, yet her expression felt wrong. Her eyes seemed unusually dark and emotionless. Suddenly, the exorcist's warning echoed in his mind. Without taking his eyes off her, Jack reached for the blessed cross hanging around his neck. The moment he began reciting the prayers he had learned, the woman's expression changed. The smile vanished instantly. Her face twisted into something unnatural. Her eyes darkened further until they seemed almost completely black. Then a horrifying scream exploded into the night. The sound was unlike anything Jack had ever heard. Before he could react, the woman simply disappeared into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. At that moment, Jack knew he was getting closer. Several days later, he arrived in a remote area where locals spoke in whispers about an elderly woman who lived completely alone. No one knew where she had come from. No one knew how old she really was. Strange things were often reported near her home, yet nobody dared investigate. Intrigued, Jack decided to visit her himself. When he finally met the woman, nothing seemed unusual at first. She appeared old and fragile. But then he noticed something that immediately caught his attention. One of her front teeth was missing. A chill ran down his spine. Instantly, he remembered the black cat from the courtyard and the tooth that had broken during the violent fight. The connection seemed impossible, yet he could not ignore it. That night, Jack prepared for what he believed would be the final confrontation. He placed the blessed cross beside him, arranged the holy water nearby, and repeated the protective prayers over and over. Midnight arrived, and with it came an unnatural silence. Then the screaming began. Witnesses later claimed they'd heard terrifying sounds echoing through the darkness for hours. Some described hearing growls. Others spoke of cries that sounded neither human nor animal. What happened inside that isolated place remains a mystery, but according to Jack's account, the elderly woman eventually revealed her true nature. The harmless appearance vanished, replaced by something monstrous and horrifying. It was as though the disguise had finally been stripped away. The confrontation lasted throughout the night. Jack continued praying while using the blessed items given to him by the exorcist. Several times he nearly lost hope. Several times he believed he would not survive until morning. Yet he refused to stop. Every time he thought of Sam, his determination grew stronger. As dawn approached, the creature's strength began to fade. The screams became weaker. The shadows surrounding it slowly disappeared. Finally, as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, the presence vanished completely. But the ordeal was not over yet. According to Jack, a second entity revealed itself shortly afterward. This one appeared even more dangerous than the first. Yet now Jack was prepared. He knew what he was facing and refused to back down. Another fierce struggle followed, ending only when the second dark force also disappeared. Weeks later, Jack finally returned home. The family immediately noticed how much he had changed. He looked older, more tired. The experience had left invisible scars that would never fully heal. Nothing could bring Sam back. Nothing could erase the pain of losing a child. But deep inside, Jack carried a small sense of peace. The thing responsible for destroying his family was gone. Years passed. The story spread from person to person until it became a local legend. Some people dismissed it as folklore. Others insisted every detail was true. Even today, nobody can say with certainty what really happened. Perhaps it was merely a tragic story shaped by grief and fear. Or perhaps something much darker was involved. But one thing remains certain. Somewhere on Earth, there are stories that refuse to die. And sometimes, the most terrifying visitors arrive at your door looking completely human.